we have number 1 down there on the door. Yeah.
Start there.
Okay, yeah. Just kind of give it a slow roll to get the whole. Yeah. All right. This is level 1 Kathara grid. It's called the 12 tree. It's the first level. It's the first level where consciousness comes into dimensionalization. And each one of the circles represents what's called the Kathara sphere or Kathara center. We call them Kathara centers. They're spots in the body where the original electrotonal programs, the original archetype programs of flash sequences for each dimensional band is stored. For each of the 12 dimensions that are encoded into the DNA and into the morph field for the human body before it transmutes with the last harmonic. Each one corresponds to one of the spheres and to one of the body areas. In a little while, I'll show you a graph that shows what fits into the body. So you can find out one of the most important things in Kathara healing is where are your Kathara centers located? Because they're not in the same places as the chakras. The chakras kind of emanate out of level 2 and 3. They're actually a much higher level in the morph field. There are the levels of the Kathara that happen first. This is the first structure where consciousness, in the form of the unified field, dimensionalizes itself, so it can begin the experience of manifestation, which is dependent upon dimensionalization, or breaking itself down into relationships of flash patterns. So, with the Kathara grid, level 1, 12 tree, that's what we refer to this as, we have the first dimensional frequencies. These are like little crystallization points that are composed of this frequency band, or the flashpoint sequences of each dimension, and its sub-frequency bands. And for the higher ones, you would have also their subharmonics. So there's an electrotonal program in each of the Kathara centers in the body that holds the flash sequences pattern. And our DNA is messed up because the flash sequence patterns in some of the Kathara spheres are off. They're not what they were supposed to be. Now, if they're working properly, if the Kathara centers have the right programs running through them, these lines here that connect them, the Kathara lines they're called, will be open, and there will be a communication and a continual transmutation of one set of pulses into another that allows the consciousness to communicate with itself all the way down through the levels of the 5 harmonic universes, from the out of matter density completely all the way through the harmonic 4, harmonic 3, harmonic 2, and down to harmonic 1. Right now, move this down a little bit, please. There are blockages within the 4th Kathara center, which corresponds with the astral body, the 4th dimensional level. You have these blocked and some of these blocked. So these are dormant right now. What that does is it severs these guys. It keeps 1, 2, and 3 cut off. There's blockages here, 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 and here. So we have 3-dimensional consciousness that's cut off right now from the higher dimensional levels of awareness. If we open the blockages by putting back the natural patterns that are in the Kathara centers, it will reopen the channels, and it will allow the identity to do its natural process of communication. And communication is done through digital data. It's done in electrical form, because we're all wave spectra, electrotonal wave spectra. That's what consciousness is. So when we're working with Kathara healing, one of the first things we're going to begin doing is resetting the pattern that will clear out the blockages in the grid. We also have blockages here and here, which means these two don't communicate with each other very well either. Now, the Kathara centers correspond with chakra centers. In the chakra system, we have 15 chakras, and just like with the Kathara centers, chakra 1, base chakra, processes first dimensional frequency. Chakra 2, which goes with the emotional body, is located back here a little bit below the navel, corresponds with D2 frequency, which is the frequency basically of the telluric realm, or the elemental kingdom. D3 is the mental body, goes with chakra 3. So there's a total correspondence between the chakra centers, the auric field levels, and the Kathara grid, and the DNA. In the 12-strand DNA pattern, which we won't get into too much today because there's a lot to that, and we'll do that in level 2. Yeah, that's one of them I need, but not now. Yeah, let's finish up on this one first. For each of the Kathara centers and chakra centers that go with them, and auric field levels, you would also have a set of meridian lines that run through the body, like the ones that they use in acupuncture and all those things. You would also have a DNA center. These centers hold the morphogenetic imprint upon which the DNA strands will come into manifestation. And right now, what we're seeing is the double helix actually has portions of first, second, and third dimensional programming. Portions of them are blocked. All this other stuff is what scientists call junk DNA. Broken pieces of the DNA chain, seemingly having no purpose. Yeah, junk. That's the rest of our consciousness in there. They're the plugs that will manifest in the components of the DNA that will allow these higher levels of consciousness to come through physical embodiment. So as we're working with clearing and resetting the structure of the Kathara grid, we are simultaneously clearing out blockages in the chakra and restructuring the base imprint for the DNA. So one implies the other, because they're totally connected. And you can work with each level at different times to amplify the effect of the other levels. The first and most important thing to do in Kathara healing is set the ground, where any healing work you do from the outer levels of the field have something to connect to. And if that program in the Kathara is bad, you can send in good frequency of a good pattern, it's not going to stick, because it doesn't have the frequencies to bring it in and hold it. So by restructuring this first, before any other healing application, and this goes for even like taking supplements, if you restructure and run the particular exercise we're going to do first, to at least temporarily recode this to its original pattern, you will set the grounding receivers in. So any healing modalities you put in on top of that will have something to plug into so they can begin to work with the whole levels of the fields. Now, these correspond to our levels of consciousness as well. We have the first dimension, which goes with our molecular consciousness, the consciousness of our cells that our bodies are actually made out of, our portions of our bodies, our lowest frequency, highest vibrating parts. I had to think about that. That one's tricky. D2 level goes with our emotional body. The qualities we feel as emotion are coming through these frequencies and processing into the body. D3 goes with our mental body, our rational logical facilities, that linear 3D thing. Okay, that's primarily associated with this. And they all work together to give us the perceptual frame we have. When we get into 4, which is starting to open for some people, we are dealing with astral consciousness. This is where you start to get out-of-body experience and you start to get lucid dreaming and becoming aware that you can go elsewhere while your body stays here. Okay, we get into this, we get into 5th dimensional consciousness, where you start to get into soul-level perception, where you start to know time is simultaneous, you start to open your incarnational memory banks, you start to get the sequencing, if it's all working right. This takes you into what we call angelic consciousness. When you're talking with angels, a lot of people these days are getting communications from angels. What they're doing, usually, is actually with levels of themselves on the D6 level, 6th dimensional frequency. We all have a part of our consciousness that's there. So we all do have a guardian angel. They like to say everybody's born with a guardian angel. Yeah, no kidding. It's part of our structure. There are other beings in those frequencies that aren't part of our immediate family that also consider themselves angels. In the structure we work with Melchizedek cloister structure, we don't get into a lot of fluff about angels. Okay? We're all angels on some level, just like we're all avatars on some level, and we're all ascended masters on some level. So we respect the levels, but we don't go gaga over somebody claiming to be one. If we happen to be getting communication from someone, oh, I'm an angel, I'm an archangel, you better listen to me. It's like, anybody that comes in with that attitude needs some growing up, all right? So I don't care if you are an angel on D6. If you still think that I'm supposed to be overly impressed by the fact that you have 6th-dimensional consciousness, I'm not going to be overly impressed. In fact, it's going to show me that there's a little immaturity level there, that you would want me to be impressed. Because if you know so much, you would know I have that level of myself too. All right? And if you really want to help, you'll simply show me how to open that level of myself, not get me to hero worship you. So a lot of times, when you're dealing with, communications that start to come from the higher levels, there's a lot of manipulation happening, where things that are not nice are pretending they're angels, and they're pretending they're helping you, and they're doing stuff in your biofield and helping you to do planetary grid work. And a lot of times, they're the ones that are trying to get control of the portals, and they're using people here. All right? So it's very important to realize we have this structure of identity. We can bring it down a bit more, please. When we get up into here, we get into higher levels of mind. We get into the 7th dimensional level of our consciousness, which is an etheric level of matter density as far as the form it would take. That, I believe, is called the karyatic mind. There are levels of mind associated with each of these levels. The 8th dimensional level is very special because through the 8th dimensional level, it connects with the higher ones, But it also connects this way, going through the center of the time matrix into something called the energy matrix, which is a structure of non-dimensionalization that exists beyond it. So you have first the collective, non-differentiated I am God consciousness, the all, okay? It compartmentalizes itself to form reality systems. It makes sets of 15-dimensional matrices that parts of its consciousness then project into and spread out in to become the individuated selves. And we're part of those individuated selves. Well, that center point is at the 8th dimensional frequencies. That connects you to the other higher levels where your own ascended master levels are. An ascended master is someone who has completely gone through and expanded through the whole 15-dimensional time matrix, completely transmuted out of dimensionalization and gone into the non-dimensionalized levels. And there are 3 levels of ascended master. We'll get into that in another level. Okay? So this is our heritage. This is our heritage of consciousness. We have been so manipulated down here by the ones from the middle levels. The ones from harmonic 2 and dimension 4, 5, and 6. They like to communicate down here. They're the little guys. Let's keep them that way because it makes us important. We have more power. They have put themselves up in these exalted positions. The ones up and through here like to call themselves sometimes ascended masters. And when they run into me, I've had certain channels that were channeling ascended masters. I say, hi, channel them for me. They won't come through. Because I can tell in the frequency if they're deep 4, 5, or 6, or higher. I'll respect anyone who's an ascended master and claiming to be one that has the frequencies there. But if they don't, excuse me, we're using a little different system. Our protocol is a little more strident. There is a reality to ascended mastery. And yes, you have ascended a little bit, getting out of harmonic 1 to harmonic 2. But this does not mean you are the capstone of the universal teachings of knowledge. Okay? So if we can get our orientation with that, we'll start to respect ourselves a little more. Start to realize we have these levels of self. We don't need to find it from an external source. We don't need to surrender our power to any group. You don't need to surrender your power to me. I'm one of the few people teaching stuff, very heavy-duty stuff, that says, don't give me your power. Here's the structure where you find yours. Use this. You can, communicate with some of the ones I communicate with, but you don't have to. You still have your own structure of identity. That's what you need to use. Because anything else sets you up for potential trickery. If you can create field integrity and you know you're talking to you all the way up, you'll be okay. And that's what the Maharic sealing process does. It gets you aligned through the middle column, lines all the chakras and everything around it, up to the D12 level. So it creates a pillar of frequency down through all of the levels of self and all the levels of biofield and the chakra system and the Kathara grid. Okay, now I'm kind of going fast because I want to have time for technique later, and that takes a while, but there's still some stuff I need to get you oriented to be able to understand the significance of the technique. All right, we get to D9. They call this the monadic level, the monadic mind. The monad is an important word simply because it's the word that's used to describe not only the 8th dimensional level, but the greater part beyond that connects you directly to source, past the ascended mastery levels. You have a monadic imprint, which is your first imprint of individuation, your first family of consciousness, because at that level you're a gestalt. You're not simply a one. You're a one of many, just like creator is one of many. It's your first stage of individuation, but you're plural at that point. The monadic imprint carries the electrotonal particle signals, the right flash rate patterns, that will line you up and enable you to communicate and expand into those levels. There are things being done right now on this planet by certain channel groups and other people working with the energies. They are bringing through technique. And because people here don't understand Kathara and they don't understand what the frequencies are doing, they think they're using technique that's really helping them. Some of them are outright saying, you need to reverse the monadic imprint. Then you're free. Sometimes freedom is a good thing. Other times freedom means you're floundering in the sea of sharks and you're not going to make it. All right. The monadic imprint holds your patterns, your flash patterns, that connect you directly to your ability to expand the source. Without those, you are stuck in the time matrix. You may make it up these levels, but you will not make it out into pre-matter, into the waveform, and then into full expansion, compaction, and then expansion back out the other side. So there are ones that are trying to get people to do monadic reversal. Sometimes without even knowing it. They won't even teach you about a monad, because if you know about it, you might start asking questions. They're teaching people how to use the energy works in reverse. So it creates the opposite effect of opening the flash patterns. So there's a lot of manipulation going on right now. If you know these things exist, you will know what to watch for. You start to say, okay, wait a minute, what's this technique doing? Before you are scanning around the internet or something. Trip across some neat techniques. These look cool, They seem to be okay. You will have a knowledge base, at least, to ask questions. Okay, what might this be doing to the Kathara grid? Is this opening or closing frequencies? What's it plugging me into? Or what's it unplugging me from? These are the questions that will help you to be able to be shrewd in what you're using out there, so you don't fall prey to a lot of the manipulation tactics that the middle guys are doing. When we get up into these levels, we get up into 9, that's the crossover point into the last harmonic. These are still considered 7, 8, and 9 are harmonic 3. I'll get where these plug into the harmonics too. The level 9 is your 9th dimensional consciousness level. This is the transition point where you start to go into pre-matter liquid light. You start making the transition into harmonic 4. 10, 11, and 12 hold the frequencies of harmonic 4, your avatar level identity, your liquid light self. The first self you were before you got down here. Or the last level of expansion you'll have going back up to expand back out of time. And then you'll go into waveform, which would be, can you pull the grid down a little? Thank you. Now, we go up to 12. Remember, there's D13, 14, and 15. Well, D13 would actually be number 12 in the universal Kathara. There's another grid just like this that goes to the higher levels of the universe. That it's not just you anymore. You're plugging into the stellar systems, to the galaxies, to the stars, to the whole morph field of the universal structure. The 12th center on you will plug into the 12th center of the universal Kathara grid. And that goes the opposite way. You'll have 12, 11, and 10 going up. And this is how you will go out of matter back into the energy matrix. What we're working on first is the lower one, the one we need to deal with. Once you get up into here and you're going into waveform, like your pre-matter liquid light, and you're not dense anymore, then you'll get the coding and the knowledge of how to activate the higher coding that allow you to completely, it's an expansion, contraction, and then re-expansion. It's a weird feeling when you go through it. I remember it from another lifetime where I did this. It's like a real strong compaction, and then a little oscillation, and poof, you expand out completely beyond dimensionalization and form. And you realize it was as if it all never happened. You still remember it, like you might remember a dream. But you know you were always there. You never left. So it's a really interesting thing when you start to make the transition out of your personal Kathara consciousness and into universal consciousness and into ascendant mastery. That's something that by working the processes and clearing the Kathara grid, you will be setting yourself up to do in your evolution, be it in this life or after you cross over. We all have a different itinerary as far as what our evolutionary schedule is, and these parts of ourselves. Can we come up this way? Thank you. These middle guys down in here, this is our level of the soul, levels of identity. These would be the oversoul up here. Harmonic 2 is the soul level. On that level, we have the reasons why we came, because we're aware of our whole evolutionary journey in time, all of our multiple selves running around in their time frames. That's where our coordination center, where they all have a purpose that intertwines, and there is a purpose we created each life that has to do with the other lifetimes. Each one is a phase in developing the overall agenda of your evolution. So when you go into integrating these levels of consciousness, you start to become aware of your soul contracts. What did you come here to do? What was it that you were supposed to accomplish this time? And everybody has it where you will have certain levels of your own personal stuff to process in your life experience here. Then you will hit a level where there's been enough processing of the personal where it starts to go into world service contracts. And it also has to do with what's happening in the mass consciousness. We're going into an ascension cycle, so everybody's on real rapid, smack you right through your personal stuff and get to do your world service contracts, whether you're ready or not. It's kind of like the souls are pushing in, saying, we got to wake you up. It's really important. We got to sit there going, oh my God. So when I've been talking about the scalar grids that hold our consciousness into these dimensionalizations, they hold, each one holds 3 dimensions. So we have the first Kathara center, second, and third would go with the first harmonic, which would be the first Huva body, which is a scalar grid of our anatomy. All right, we have 5 Huva bodies, tritonal scalar grids, that hold our consciousness into dimensionalization. When we deal with the Huva bodies, it's like, instead of dealing with each little chakra, we're dealing with bunches of them, all at the same time. So if we clear things on the big level, it automatically shifts the little stuff, so we don't spend all of our time working on little things when we can just do the flip switch and do the whole scalar shield. So we work a lot with the Huva bodies instead of just the chakras or just the little Kathara spheres. We can use these, and we will in other levels, as backup. But the most important thing to do is begin resetting the pattern of the Huva bodies. We have harmonic 1 Huva body called the Nada Huva body that goes with Kathara sphere, or Kathara center 1, 2, and 3. That has our incarnate station of identity, our 3-dimensional identity. Here we have Kathara center 4, 5, and 6. That's our 4th, 5th, and 6th dimensional levels of consciousness. That's the Alphi Huva body. Okay? And this is going to become important because this is where you learn about the currents that you're running. All right? When we get up to here, here we have 7, 8, and 9th dimensional levels of consciousness. The 3 of them together represent the Beta Huva body of harmonic 3. And that is our oversoul identity, where harmonic 2 is our soul identity and harmonic 1 is our incarnate identity. Then we get up into 10, 11, and 12th dimensional consciousness. That is our Mahara Huva body. This is where the word Maharic, shield, and things come from. We'll get into the shields in a minute. But the Mahara Huva body is the original imprint where you enter pre-matter liquid light. That holds the pattern of everything below it in its pure original form.
Adam Cogman.
Yeah, the Adam Cogman form of the term you see. Yeah. So, all of these lower things, all the lower Huva bodies, there's distortions in them, which we all have messes and messes and messes from many, many centuries of 3 harmonics worth of karmic buildup and twisting and stuff that wasn't supposed to be there. You can use the Mahara Huva body and its programs to hit the cosmic restart button on the Kathara grid. And the more you run the frequencies from this Huva body up here, it's called the Mahara Huva body, the more you will restructure the imprint for health, because that holds the imprint for health, our original imprint of perfection, before we came into the densities further and got ourselves all convoluted and stuff. So the first thing we do in Kathara healing is hit the restart button and learn to run the frequencies of the Mahara Huva body into the body in the lower centers. It's one of the first things that needs to be done, because that is setting the ground for anything else you will do to facilitate healing to stick. If you do it a lot, I mean, when we just first started doing this a couple days ago, and I've been going through Kundalini activations like you wouldn't believe. They have me on a little bit of an accelerated trip here because I have to be able to transmit to help, like when I'm doing with an audience. If my fields can get up to a certain level, it will help yours activate faster. So they kind of amp mine up. But ever since we did what's called the planetary biofeed interface opening, which I'll show you what that is in a minute, I have had frequency running through me that is extremely noticeable. So you may really have physically noticeable results. And if it starts to get achy and those kind of things because your body's not used to the frequencies, Advil works. And they said it was okay for a couple days, but don't overdo it. I have 4 Advil in my system right now because it was really intense, because they've been running a lot of current through me today. So when you work with the Kathara, this is not just a little baby healing technique, okay? This is not learning to play with energy balls and knock them around and, the little things. This is, you are dealing with energy here. And you need to respect it. And respect the process. And not overdo it. Trust it. Because your own higher levels of self, when you start working with the Mahara Huva body, the consciousness that's there is not going to let you blow yourself up by running too much frequency through it. It's going to have a shutdown. If you start to try to pull more and more and more because you want to really energize yourself, it's going to know your tolerance levels as far as what your cells can do in what amount of time. So it will just shut it off. Say, okay, enough, So you do have an interior guidance system that will make sure you don't goof up when you're using these processes. And that applies to working with someone else too. When you go into facilitation, where you're learning to clear the grids on somebody else, you don't have to worry about harming them because you don't know enough. Okay? Your higher identity levels will be in communication with their higher identity levels. And together, they will decide what is appropriate and it will just, you just do your thing, and if you're transmitting anything that doesn't need to be there, it'll be blocked. So you don't have to worry. It's kind of like you have your own higher level babysitters. You have your mentor levels that will make sure you don't do any harm, and will lead you progressively to understanding more and more, so you would gain confidence. So you don't have to worry about, oh, gee, do I know how to do this enough? I'm dealing with real energy here. Could really hurt somebody. They won't let you hurt somebody. So it's something you can trust. Okay. I'm talking so fast I can't breathe. All right, let's see. And the point I want to make first on understanding this, we saw how it plugs into the Huva bodies. There's something in a few minutes I'm going to talk about called the Huva body shields. They are crystalline formations. They are these scalar grids that hold the Huva bodies in place. Huva bodies are spherical forms of energy. They create a tissue capsule that separates each level of the identity, and as you integrate one level to the other, that tissue capsule dissolves and you expand. But the Huva bodies, what allows them to become spheres of energy are the scalar templates and the flash rates with that three-dimensional axis that begins the motion of the flash rates that allows spherical energy to form. So when we're dealing with Huva bodies, if you want to reprogram a Huva body, you go right to its scalar grid. And they call the scalar grids of the Huva bodies, the programming centers, the shields. They call them the Huva body shields. When you see them with higher vision, they look like little crystalline structures. They look like discs made of crystals of light. And you can see parts that are blocked because they're like light bulbs that aren't lit, and you know they're supposed to be. And you can see flash lines. You can watch the sequences run through them. You usually have to get up to about D9 perception to be able to spot them, like to go that deep. But once you do, you can see where things are unbalanced in them. So you know where you have to run frequency to reestablish the flash line patterns. Because it all comes down to the Partakai phasing flash line patterns. They are the electrotonal programs that control the whole thing. There are some systems that talk about the fire letters. Okay? I know a lot of the Jewish tradition gets into the fire letter sequences and how important they are. What the fire letter sequences are part of the scalar wave control patterns that when put in to the Kathara centers will reestablish the right order within the electrotonal pattern. They're wave guides. We use something that's a consolidated version of fire letters, which is called a geomancy. If you take sets of 12 fire letters from the Hebrew alphabet, and there's actually five sacred alphabets that have the visual form and the tonal equivalent to what you need to reprogram. But if you take certain geometrical shapes, they are formed by combining sets of 12 fire letters. So instead of, again, going down and doing the little fire letter sequences, you take the geomancy. You take the form that would appear as a symbol that's geometrical in form. And some of them are, like there's control symbols, and then there's support symbols in every dimensional frequency band. So when we get into multiple levels of Kathara healing, we will be using more and more sets of symbol codes, because symbol codes are waveguides. When you envision a symbol code, you are creating a mini scalar grid. Your thoughts are things. This is what we're not taught out here. Boy, would things be really different if we were. When you think a thought, there's no difference between the consciousness you're using to form that thought and the consciousness that's used to form all of this. You're just perceiving it from a different level. It's not in these frequency bands that appear solid. It appears in your head because it's closer to the frequency bands that your consciousness is stationed on. When you think a thought, you are creating a mini scalar grid, a mini morphogenetic field upon which things will manifest. So if you hold in mind an image of a symbol code, you are creating a scalar pattern, a flash pattern, that when put into the body, into the Kathara center or into some other level of the morph field, will alter the flash patterns that are there. This is what science doesn't understand. They think the New Agers are a bunch of weirdos because they go around visualizing things and think they're going to happen. This is why they happen. They're changing the flash line sequences of the pattern, the holographic template for manifestation. When you think things, keep this in mind. If you're having a bad day, you just catch yourself going really into really negative thought stuff. Every time you do that, you're setting a flash pattern that's going into your morph field that is creating a reality. You can shift it by shifting the thought. It is very much worth shifting to a higher thought pattern. And it's also where a lot of people say, there's this movement, the light, love, and cluelessness movement. They refuse